have been told almonds are the king of nuts. But there's a Native American nut that's got vitamin C inside it, half the calories of an almond, and once fed entire mountain towns for free. Roughly 4 billion of these trees used to grow across the eastern United States. Today, almost nobody harvests them. Something killed them off. And the cover-up is way uglier than you'd guess.
Suddenly, in just a few short years, all the chestnuts were gone, all 4 billion of them. Even today, it remains the greatest ecological disaster in the history of planet Earth. So, what really happened? Well, my friend, I'm glad you asked. And this is the true story of the American chestnut tree.
Let's talk about the American chestnut first. So before the Bronx Zoo, before the almond boom, before any of this drama, there was one tree that ran the show in the eastern forests. It's called the American chestnut. And it's not some tiny shrub you've never heard of. We're talking giants. The American Chestnut Foundation says these trees grew up to 100 feet tall, with trunks 4 to 7 feet thick, and lived for 400 to 600 years. People called it the redwood of the East. That nickname was earned, not given. Now here's the part most videos skip. The American chestnut wasn't just common, it was everywhere. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy estimates there were nearly 4 billion of them, stretching from Maine all the way down to Mississippi and Alabama, and west to the Ohio Valley. In some Appalachian ridges, 1 out of every 4 trees you'd see was a chestnut. On certain western slopes of the Great Smoky Mountains, that number jumped to 7 out of 10. But the wild part wasn't the size or the count. It was what fell from those trees every autumn. Bushels and bushels of nuts. Free food just sitting on the forest floor for anyone willing to bend down. Bears got fat. Wild turkeys got fat. Hogs got so fat that one Cades Cove farmer said their eyes swelled shut. And the people who lived on those ridges? They didn't just eat the nuts, they built their entire economy around them. However, that economy was about to get hit with something nobody saw coming, and the answer to what killed it is sitting inside a single shipping crate from Japan. Now compare an American chestnut with an almond. Before we get to that crate, you need to understand what was actually lost, because the American chestnut isn't just any nut, it's a nutritional freak. Pull up the USDA Food Data Central numbers and the gap is brutal. Per 100 grams, an almond hits 579 calories. A chestnut comes in at 245. That's less than half. Almonds have about 49 grams of fat. Chestnuts have about 2 grams. So if you've ever wondered why almonds make you bloated and chestnuts don't, that's why. But here's the detail every dietitian misses. Chestnuts are the only commonly eaten nut on Earth with real vitamin C inside them. A raw American chestnut packs around 43 milligrams per 100 grams.
Chestnuts are low in calories and they're very low carb food, high in protein. They're from the beech tree family. You know, they're also antioxidants and heart healthy. Antioxidants are some of the greatest things you can eat and put in your body. Anything good for your heart. They're cancer fighters. They lower your blood pressure. They're good for hypertension. I'm serious.
That's about 72% of your daily value sitting inside a nut. Almonds, basically zero vitamin C. The University of Missouri Center for Agroforestry literally calls the chestnut, quote, the only nut that can lay claim to vitamin C content. There's more. Chestnuts also beat almonds on vitamin B6, folate, and they've got way less saturated fat. The carb profile is so different that chestnuts are sometimes called the grain that grows on a tree. It's why during World War II, entire Mediterranean villages survived on chestnut flour when wheat ran out. Now flip the camera to the almond, and the story gets darker. A peer-reviewed study published in Ecological Indicators in 2017 found the total water footprint of a single California almond is about 3.2 gallons. The popular figure you'll see online is 1.1 gallon, and that's just irrigation water. The full footprint is triple. The California Water Impact Network reported in 2024 that almond orchards now drink up between 14 and 17% of all the agricultural water in California, which is more than every household in the state combined. And almost 70% of the harvest gets shipped overseas. Therefore, the math is wild. A native tree that produced a vitamin C-loaded nut for free got replaced by an imported water hog that ships its harvest to other countries. So who actually used to eat the American chestnut? And why did they treat it like medicine? The Cherokee called the chestnut a healing tree. Long before any of this, the Cherokee, Mohegan, Haudenosaunee, and Shawnee tribes were using the chestnut as more than food. The McClung Museum of Natural History at the University of Tennessee has documented it in detail. The Cherokee used the leaves, the bark, the wood, the nuts, even the galls on the tree, for everything from medicine to dye, to fence rails, to coffins. Year-old chestnut leaves were brewed into a tea specifically for heart trouble. Younger leaves got dipped in hot water and applied to old sores. Cough syrup is made by boiling chestnut leaves with mullein and brown sugar. There was even a cold bark tea mixed with buckeye used to stop bleeding after birth. And the Mohegan used chestnut leaf infusions to treat rheumatism, colds, and whooping cough. But the whooping cough connection isn't just folk medicine. The American Journal of Pharmacy published a paper on chestnut leaves for pertussis back in 1863. By the 1890s, U.S. pharmacy formulas were prescribing fluid extract of chestnut leaves for the same condition. Science actually backed up what the tribes already knew. In Appalachia, the chestnut became something even bigger. They called it the cradle-to-grave tree. You could rock a newborn in a chestnut wood cradle. You could fatten your hog on a chestnut mast every fall. You could wear leather gloves cured with chestnut bark tannins. And when you died, you got buried in a chestnut coffin. It really was your whole life. The poorest mountain families had 4 ways to make cash money. Folklorist Ralph Lutz, who interviewed survivors in Patrick County, Virginia, recorded it directly. Chestnuts, hogs, moonshine, and dried apples. That was it. Every fall, families would drag thousands of bushels of nuts to the general store. From there, they got loaded onto rail cars headed for New York and Philadelphia. By Christmas, those same nuts were being roasted on city street corners. However, in 1904, in the most random place possible, the whole thing started to die. Then in 1904, the blight hit the Bronx Zoo. A forester named Herman Merkel was walking through the New York Zoological Park, which is what people called the Bronx Zoo back then, when he noticed something off. The chestnut trees on the property were dying, not slowly, fast. By the next summer, the trees were dropping like flies all over the zoo. Merkel sent samples to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The case landed on the desk of William A. Murrell, a mycologist at the New York Botanical Garden. By 1905, Murrell had isolated the killer. It was a fungus called Cryphonectria parasitica. The fungus had hitched a ride from Japan, riding inside the bark of Japanese chestnut nursery stock that had been imported to the United States since the 1870s. The Japanese chestnut had grown up alongside the fungus for thousands of years. It had immunity. The American chestnut had never met it. It had zero defense.
But in the early 1900s, an invasive fungus native to Asia was accidentally introduced that has wiped out our American chestnuts. You know, there they have chestnuts and we have chestnuts. And their chestnuts have lived with this fungus for many years. They're adapted to it. They can defend themselves. But when it was introduced here, our native trees don't have those same defenses and were really impacted by it. So it was first detected in 1905, and in about the 40 years after that, spread through most of the range of chestnut and killed billions of trees.
Once the fungus enters a wound in the bark, it secretes oxalic acid, which kills the tree's cells one by one. A canker forms. The canker grows. Eventually, it wraps the whole trunk, strangles it, and the tree above the wound dies. Sarah Fitzsimmons of the American Chestnut Foundation describes it as unstoppable once it gets in. The spread was unreal. The blight moved roughly 50 miles per year. By 1906, Merkel estimated that 98% of chestnut trees in the Bronx were already infected. By 1912, it had reached North Carolina. Pennsylvania actually cut a mile-wide fire break across the state to stop it. The fire break failed. Newspapers ran headlines telling woodsmen to, quote, "burn that tree, spare not a single bough." Boy Scout troops got sent into the woods to chop down infected chestnuts. By 1940, an estimated 3.5 billion American chestnut trees were dead. Some historians have called it the worst ecological disaster in North American forests since the Ice Age. But the strangest part is, the tree didn't fully die. The roots survived underground, and they still send up little sprouts today. Therefore, the species is technically alive, but it's called functionally extinct because almost every sprout gets reinfected and killed before it can produce a single nut.
Suddenly, in just a few short years, all the chestnuts were gone, all 4 billion of them. Even today, it remains the greatest ecological disaster in the history of planet Earth. So, what really happened? Well, my friend, I'm glad you asked. And this is the true story of the American chestnut tree.
So why doesn't anyone harvest American chestnuts today? This is where it gets really uncomfortable, because the loss didn't just happen by accident. The almond industry quietly filled the vacuum, and the policy choices that followed made sure the chestnut never came back. After the blight wiped out the eastern crop, the U.S. needed a tree nut to dominate the market. California stepped up. The state had the climate, the irrigation, and the marketing muscle. The Almond Board of California was created in 1950 to do exactly one thing, which was to make almonds the default American nut. By the 1980s, almond demand had exploded. Today, almond demand is up 400% compared to 1980, and California grows about 80% of the entire global almond supply. Meanwhile, the American chestnut sat in the dirt. The University of Florida's IFAS extension reports that the United States now produces less than 1% of the world's chestnuts. There are only around 10,000 acres of chestnut orchards in the entire country, mostly Chinese hybrids, not native. The U.S. imports nearly 7 million pounds of chestnuts every year, mainly from Italy, China, South Korea, and Portugal. Per capita chestnut eating in America is less than 1/10 of a pound. In Korea, it's almost 60 times higher. The almond didn't beat the chestnut on nutrition. It beat the chestnut on infrastructure. California got the Central Valley Project. The chestnut got nothing. However, the almond's win came with a body count. In February 2025, the bee industry got hit by a wipeout. Project APIS-M and the Almond Board of California confirmed it. Around 60% of all commercial honeybee colonies in the United States died over the winter, with peak losses landing right during almond pollination season. That's roughly 1.7 million colonies gone, with an estimated $600 million hit to beekeepers. Every February, 2 million honey beehives get trucked into the Central Valley to pollinate almond orchards. It's the largest managed pollination event on Earth, and that single crop just lost the bees more than any animal industry loses any year. So while the chestnut sits forgotten in the soil, the almond keeps draining water and killing bees to feed an export market. But there's a fight to bring the American chestnut back. In 1983, a group called the American Chestnut Foundation was founded in Asheville, North Carolina. Their goal was to bring the tree back. They tried 2 routes. Route 1 was traditional breeding. They crossed American chestnut with Chinese chestnut, which has natural blight resistance, and then back-crossed it over and over until the trees were about 94% American chestnut and 6% Chinese. They've planted these hybrids across more than 40 restoration trails on the East Coast. Route 2 was way more controversial. Scientists at SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse, led by William Powell and Charles Maynard, took a different approach.
For the last 30 years, there have been scientists at State University of New York that have been trying to figure out how they can create a chestnut tree that is blight resistant. And they've succeeded. It's really incredible what they've done. And they've done it with one transgene from wheat. This is Bill Powell. He's the scientist who has pushed this forward.
They inserted a single gene from wheat into the chestnut's DNA. The gene produces an enzyme called oxalate oxidase, which breaks down the exact toxin the fungus uses to kill the tree. They called the new line Darling 58. It would have been the first GMO forest tree ever released into the wild in the United States. For 12 years, Darling 58 was the poster child of chestnut restoration. Then, on December 8, 2023, the entire project blew up. The American Chestnut Foundation released an official statement and pulled its support. Why? Because researchers in Maine had discovered something nobody wanted to admit. The trees that had been propagated and shared with collaborators since 2016 weren't actually Darling 58. They were a different version called Darling 54, which had the new gene accidentally inserted into the middle of another important chestnut gene, disrupting it. Nobody caught the mix-up for 7 straight years. On top of that, the trees were showing, quote, striking variability in blight tolerance, big losses in growth, and rising mortality. William Pitt, the CEO of the foundation, said the trees were unsuitable for species restoration. Sarah Fitzsimmons warned that releasing inferior GMO trees would, quote, unfairly skew public perception against biotechnology solutions for the rest of the forest. The foundation had spent over $2 million on the project. SUNY refused to withdraw their petition to the USDA. They're still trying to get the GMO chestnut approved today, but the entire scientific community is now split. Therefore, the comeback isn't over, but it's no longer the clean restoration story you've been told. The Seneca Nation just rejected the GMO chestnut. There's one more group that got left out of every mainstream chestnut story: the indigenous communities whose ancestors planted, ate, and stewarded this tree for thousands of years. The proposed release area for the GMO American chestnut covers the historic territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, which includes the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk, and Tuscarora nations across upstate and central New York. A peer-reviewed paper by researchers Barnhill, Dilling, and Delborn, published in the journal Biological Conservation in 2019, made the conflict clear. Indigenous scholars framed the GMO chestnut as, quote, a violation of sovereignty of nature and of self-determination. The Indigenous Environmental Network formally opposed it. So did several seed sovereignty leaders, including Rowan White, who runs the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network. The reason was simple. Once GMO chestnut pollen and seeds spread, they don't stop at a reservation border. There's no opt-out. A tree that was sacred to these communities for thousands of years was about to get genetically rewritten by outside scientists without their consent. So, on October 24, 2023, the Seneca Nation's Gakwi Dayo H Farms made a public statement of their own. Jerry Fisher of the Seneca Nation Agriculture Department invited a different group called the American Chestnut Cooperators Foundation to plant 100% wild, non-GMO American chestnut seedlings directly on Seneca land. It was a quiet but loud rejection. They didn't want the lab version, they wanted the real one back. The lesson sitting underneath all of this is huge. The almond didn't just take over because it tasted better. It took over because the American chestnut was wiped out by a fungus from across the world, fattened the wallets of a different industry, then nearly got patented by a private company called American Castanea before the tribes pushed back. The almond gets the spotlight. The chestnut paid the price. So if any of this hits you, smash that subscribe button and stick around. There's a lot more buried food history exactly like this, and it deserves to be remembered.
This is the true story of the American chestnut.